We have just experienced the beginning of a new year. 2026 is officially here. Whether you've heard that 2026 has a special significance or not, whether you believe in astrological predictions or spiritual cycles, it doesn't matter. At some point, you will feel it in your bones, like I do. 2026 is the beginning of something wonderful inside us, something that is already shaping our hopes, building on our dreams, and purging our frustrations from the past. We are moving into the new consciousness paradigm. The old way of doing something, whatever that may be, through the governing principle of the ego, is coming to an end, yielding control of self to the heart. I have always known that change is created within us, and I have recently been feeling this truth leaving the realm of a mind-based understanding and moving into a heartfelt knowing. There is a difference between agreeing with the mind and knowing with the heart. This year is the year when it all begins. Feel free to substitute the word all with anything that the conditioned mind has robbed you of in the past. This is a new beginning for all of us. More people feel now differently about their options in life. Long-term despair, frustration, depression, and submission to the old ways become a thing of the past as the old ways die within us and all around us. Let's remember for a moment how manifestation works. A desire is born within the heart. Our mind picks it up eagerly, spinning the thread further, thinking about ways on how to manifest that desire, working in conjunction with the heart to imagine all kinds of beautiful scenarios that represent a possible future. We feel good about it. And then, out of the blue, the ego swoops in with its attachments, poisoning the mind by invoking and sustaining its conditioning. Suddenly, a long list of reasons pops up within the mind, opposing the feasibility of that desire by presenting seemingly valid reasons that convince us not to pursue this thread of thought any further. Sometimes the ego does that in a very abrupt way, like presenting a cease and desist order. Does that sound familiar? I bet it does. Myself, I have been down that path numerous times in my life, persuading myself that my desires are not worth manifesting, or if they are worth it, it would be too difficult to realize them, paying a price in time, effort, and even more suffering. No more. I am done with sacrificing my own dreams, silently acquiescing to the status quo that has shaped me. There comes a time in everybody's life where childhood dreams suddenly matter again, where the battle between the conditioned mind and the inspired heart is fought out mercilessly, fueled by a lifetime of pain and suffering. We slowly become aware that this pain and suffering throughout a lifetime is caused by the conditioned mind. While we become disillusioned by the inherently fake reasons the conditioned mind uses to oppose the inspired heart at the behest of the ego, we slowly decide and then choose the inspired heart to lead our lives. We are not going to keep up this inner conflict any longer. It doesn't add any value to our lives. On the contrary, it keeps us locked within the illusion of our 3-by-3-foot self-imposed prison, wasting our lives away when there would be so much to gain and experience. If the conditioned mind would finally shut up, allowing us to do what the inspired heart is telling us. There is only one way to find out. We can decide and choose on principle to trust our inspired heart before the conditioned mind gets in the way. From the moment we start trusting our inspired heart, we are putting nails on the conditioned mind's coffin in a process that reclaims our power. After this happens, the conditioned mind will be less interfering in future while we get into the habit of trusting the inspired heart, thus setting the foundation for a new life filled with abundance, joy, and love. We were never meant to live a life at the sidelines, cheering others as they pass the finish line. We were meant to run freely and eventually pass that finish line ourselves, together with and alongside all human beings. I have been reminded in the most visceral way that there is still struggle ahead. On the morning of New Year's Day, I woke up with a moderate intensity nightmare fresh in my head. This shows that there is still deep-seated stress within me that I need to actively heal. Life on Earth is not a walk through a rose garden. However, I take solace in the fact that the dream was not intense. It seems to me that my subconscious was just pointing to unresolved issues and still resilient survival fears. All the more reason to trust my gut feeling and avoid getting attached to the conditioned mind. I don't want to hear from my conditioned mind anymore. Do this or else. I prefer to follow my heart even more focused than before, sensing a feeling like, do this and live again from my heart. This state of being, following our unconditional surrender to the inspired heart, is liberating and uplifting, bringing a smile to our faces. Whereas submitting to the conditioned mind feels like carrying the dull weight of a grief unknown that has dark and murky roots. Having been chained by a lifetime of conditioning through parents, society, managers, television, and our whole environment, spins a subtle but powerful web of restraints that tightens around us at the slightest tremble of the web while we try to break free. I don't know about you, but I'm increasingly getting more tired and feel more aversion towards those restraints. I'm starting to resent them, not just because they rob me of my freedom, but also because they are increasingly robbing me of my soul. Life is dull when it shouldn't. I feel that the time has come for me to cut those restraints that I myself spun around me. Yes, spun because they are subtle like threads of a spider web. Sadly, they get their power from me. I lend those restraints the strength of conviction and powers of persuasion to keep myself in check, fueled by my own fear of the unknown. As I wrote in my first book, the ego is like an iceberg. 90% of it is underwater. Just like an iceberg has a different density compared to seawater, so does the ego exhibit denser aspects that we can't easily recognize. We can only become aware of them through day-to-day friction with its attachments. Sometimes this friction is barely recognizable, but sometimes it is shaking up our existence like the tower card of a tarot deck. It all boils down to the ego and its attachments. Sometimes these attachments cannot easily be pried from its grip, unless we persist softening that grip through inner work and abundant patience. So, what can we do about it? In my case, I can only surrender further to my inspired heart and find solace in its reassuring message. Do this and live again. Life circumstances have brought me to a crossroad that doesn't leave many options. Just as I easily materialized over time those restraints within me, I can choose to make them disappear with the same ease, can I? I didn't want to make this episode depressing. On New Year's Eve, I felt empowered. During my traditional meditation at midnight when the old year dies and the new year is born, I had even a contact experience in a setting filled with celebration and joy that exemplified the power of the unburdened mind. I went to bed happy and without negative thoughts, but when I woke up with the memory of a nightmare, my subconscious clearly alerted me to unresolved issues that I needed to heal and integrate. The Tower card of a tarot deck. Only when I went for a walk to clear my head and meditated afterwards, I felt better. This was not how I envisioned spending New Year's Day. It felt like a lifetime of conditioning came crashing down on me, spearheaded by that ugly and eerily familiar survival mindset. One thing is certain, such life events tend to humble you immensely. I have a lot more compassion and understanding for other humans going through similar experiences. I have also a lot of respect for them once they manage to break free of their own chains. Those chains we bind ourselves with can be released by a simple choice within us. It is not easy and takes a lot of courage. Yes, there's this word again, courage. I feel like the cowardly lion in The Wizard of Oz. I understand now that courage is not lack of fear, but a compelling nudge to act despite fear, taking one step after the other while being immersed in this mindset of senseless fear, guided by the inspired heart. I can hear my inner voice shaking with laughter, saying, "Shut up and walk, nobody is going to die today." And I'm thinking that I didn't sign up for this when I incarnated on this world. "Yes, you did," my inner voice said. "You just don't remember it." Oh well, I must admit that this small interaction with my inner voice, the voice of my true self, has been empowering in its own way. And perhaps all this is unreasonable. Making such a fuss about New Year's Day? After all, it only marks the passing of 365 days. In other words, it marks a full revolution of the Earth around our sun. Let's view this from the perspective of a galactic citizen. Every day is a new day. Why should we celebrate just the first day of a new year? This appears as well to be a conditioned notion. Every day should be the beginning of something new and inspiring. Every day should be cherished, celebrated, lived with a heart wide open and a mind clear and unburdened. I'm thinking that if I can condition myself to believe this, then I can counteract my own conditioning of experiencing a string of 365 days mundane and negative days that is broken by one cherished and celebrated day in this context. How weird the conditioned mind can be, and how weary it can make us. Perhaps this is why my heart was yearning to be in a frozen wilderness, like Alaska or even the Arctic, enduring cold winds along polar bears. Don't take me wrong, I love a tropical beach and the sea itself. However, I always had a soft spot for such a cold and barren environment. Perhaps my true self was trying to tell me to be an explorer. I can imagine walking in cold weather gear, performing experiments in the Arctic with a huge smile on my face, and then walking back to the scientific outpost with an even bigger smile on my face. While exploring the external environment, I could explore my own internal environment, the domain of my own consciousness. This intense, dense, and visceral third density consciousness environment is exactly what we need to acquire wisdom and getting to know ourselves in the process. One could argue that getting to know ourselves is more important than getting to know others in our environment. Astonishingly, they wouldn't be wrong. It would be a valid perspective, for everything around us is the result of frequency modulation and consciousness. Let's remember that it is not by reading a textbook that we know things. It is by experiencing them firsthand, forming perspectives through the contrast of life, and thereby putting all puzzle pieces of our experiential data together. This way, we can watch the puzzle become alive within us, empowered by experience and eternalized by memory. And we are not alone in this quest. All of us are on our own quest to find ourselves. Sometimes we get help from others, and sometimes we must work on our own, piecing together our own divine puzzle of our true self in the darkness, aided only by the light shining from our heart. At the end of this episode, I am reminded that life is precisely what we make of it. What we do in life matters. We didn't come here against our wishes. Nobody forced us to incarnate, therefore it would be futile to complain. We have two options. We can either cease our efforts to evolve and check out, or we can double our efforts with heart-led inspiration and look what's behind the curtain of fear. I, for one, can't wait to rip that curtain apart in 2026.